Time to get together all the different podcasters for the Big Three, talk about what's going on with Florida State, Florida, and Miami as we head into the 2025 college football season.
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into a crossover edition of Locked On Seminoles with Locked On Gators and Locked On Canes. I'm your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football recruiting analyst. Thank you for making Locked On Seminoles, Gators, and Canes your first listens each and every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Football season is basically here. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your future bets right now. So let's get everything lined up here. We're going to talk about the top players, the projections for all three of the Big Three, injury news, anything that's going on that's pressing, some breakout players. And to help me do that, Mr. Alex Dono and Mr. Brandon Olson. Gentlemen, how are we doing today?
Wonderful. Football's back. All I care about.
Great opening.
10 days till Miami faces Notre Dame, so I'm right there. We're all the way back almost.
There you go.
Well, Florida has almost as big a game against Long Island, so let's not downplay that one. Let's not downplay that mark.
I don't want to downplay that mega pass. I didn't even know Long Island had a football team until right now.
You know, it's crazy. I live an hour and a half from campus. I also didn't know that. Like that's how
that
small.
Is not a good sign. That is not a good sign.
Hey, but Todd Bowles' son plays there, so that's a fun fact about him.
Oh, okay. Anyway, all right, gentlemen, let's dive in here. With these three programs, they're all at different spots. Like Miami's got a transfer quarterback, Florida State's got a transfer quarterback, and of course, every 12 minutes there's some kind of update with DJ Lagway having another injury.
He's got no limbs left at this point.
That's what I mean. Like there's rumors that he's just being carted around. Like I need you to confirm or deny that, Brandon. Because it's comical on social media. Like it's literally comical with DJ Lagway. And for whatever it's worth, DJ's a good guy. I hope he has the best, but he's probably got to be like, I just got to get off social media. And I'm guessing his family doesn't want him on it anymore. So I'll just start with you, Brandon. First thing, who's going to be the biggest win for the Gators this year? Wardley knows they have a tough schedule. What game? You can pick whichever one you want. Who are they going to beat? Biggest like upset or whatever you want to think. Most important win for the Gators will be who in 2025?
I'm really torn, honestly, because there's two games that I constantly go back and forth between of games. Like every time I think of what's the most important game you need to win, I don't do the Texas thing. I think of Miami and I think of Georgia. I think those two, because Miami, you got absolutely destroyed, annihilated, bombarded in your own home stadium. That was really fun to have front row seats to. Love that. That was the best day of my life, actually. That it was just awful. You can't let it happen again, especially because you don't play them every year. Like, so it's not as simple as if you lose to Florida State, you can just go, oh, we'll get our get back next year. You don't get to do that with Miami because it's not an annual series. So I don't think you can go 0-2 here against them. And then Georgia, I think you got to beat Kirby at some point. I do feel like I don't think Georgia's a bad team at all. I think they're still a very good team that'll be in the college football playoff. That'll be in probably the SEC championship. But I do think that we've seen them kind of, I don't know, like level out a little bit, maybe like the same way you see every so often it would happen with Nick Saban, where people would just go, oh, well, Alabama doesn't look like they might be that Alabama anymore. Or they might not be that Alabama this year. I think we're kind of in that point with Georgia, and I think Florida, I've said it before, I think they've got a college football playoff roster. It's just about coaching, catching up to the talent now. And so if you're going to beat Georgia, this is the year to do it. And because also when we talk about 2026 for Florida, you've got 4/5 of your starting offensive linemen returning. You've got your entire defensive line returning. 2026, you will not have that luxury. So this might actually be your best chance to do that. Billy Napier's got a unique spot where he's probably never going to get this level of talent retention again. And so you kind of have to knock that one out here. So if you're going to do it at all, Billy, 2025 is the year to do it.
All right, Alex. Which game? If you want to pick more than one, you're more than welcome. Miami's schedule's interesting. Who's going to be the biggest win for the Miami Hurricanes?
I mean, if they can get it, I'm going to look right at week 1 against Notre Dame. If they can get that victory, I mean, you think about the opportunity you have with a top 5 team, because that's what the Fighting Irish are, coming to your stadium to start the year. You know, Miami's in the top 10 right now, so it's a top 10 matchup on a Sunday night, facing the national runners-up from last year. That to me could be a season-defining game. And if you win that game, you make a statement that all of America is going to see. You know, I guess there could be one of those scenarios where you lose a close competitive game and you still come off with your stock going up a little bit. But I start right there. And then, beyond that Notre Dame opener, there are a couple of other choices. I'm certainly not going to ignore Florida with Brandon right there next to me. You know, of course, Miami's going to have that big target on their jerseys as far as the Gators are concerned after the way last year's game went down. You know, Florida, I expect to be, of course, ranked when they come down to Hard Rock Stadium. That's another big time opportunity. And then, gosh, with the way Miami has performed in recent years, they seem to step on so many mousetraps in the ACC. I could look at like any of the 8 conference games on the schedule, but the one that I probably have circled, you know, outside of, you know, sorry, Brian, it's not, I'm not going to say Florida State, not downplaying.
It's not.
But on the road at SMU in early November, that's a big one, you know, against a team that played in the ACC championship game last year. And also there's a bunch of former Miami players on their roster, and their head coach, Rhett Lashley, is a former Miami offensive coordinator. De'Aaron King, who played at Miami, is coaching their quarterback. So it's like Miami East versus Miami West. So there's a couple of others that I have circled, but I don't have to look too far past week 1 in Notre Dame.
The only issue I have with you talking about week 1 is you said that Notre Dame's coming to your stadium, and it's not your stadium; it's the Miami Dolphins stadium. But yes, you do play there for sure. That's
look at the low hanging fruit that Brandon took right there. That was tough.
I can't say too much to argue it, except what I will point out is the loudest that I've ever heard that stadium, and I've been to a lot of Dolphin games, been to a lot of Miami games. The loudest I have ever witnessed that stadium was the last time Notre Dame came to town in 2017. Like the partial roof of that building nearly blew off. So it's going to feel like Miami's, even if they pay a lease for it, it's going to feel like their stadium on August 31st.
As far as Florida State, I recently said on Locked On Seminoles, I said I wouldn't pick either game right now to go their way, but they'll end up beating Florida or Miami in a game, and they'll lose to like Virginia or Virginia Tech. That's what I think. That's because Florida State is absolutely impossible. And just for the record, I watched a roundtable with Bud Elliott and Brandon Sinone and a bunch of other guys, Warchant, et cetera. And every one of them basically parroted the same thing, that the concern is the depth. Like better teams like Miami's offensive line, et cetera, or Florida's offense like Jake Slaughter and those guys, they're concerned that Florida State is going to go up-tempo, which Gus is known for. And like their defensive line, their front, like starter's good. But in the second half of games against quality opponents, they don't think the depth is there. They may not win any of their big games. Their 5th toughest game is debatable, but it's probably NC State. It's on the road the week before Florida. One of the reasons I think they might beat Florida is if Florida goes south, like if Lagway gets hurt again, they might quit at the end of the year. But if Lagway's healthy all year long, they could be 9-3 at the end of the year. So like Florida, I wouldn't touch with the 10-foot pole. So that's a difficult team. But we'll get into that a little bit more here in just a minute. When we come back, we're going to be talking more about the injury front, the schedule, the expectations for all 3 of these programs. That is next here on this crossover edition. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. August 26th is officially FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who look for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling for your MVP, eyeing a bold shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champion before week 1 even kicks off, this is your moment. So take a flyer on the MVP race, maybe, or perhaps you've got somebody you really think is going to win it. For me, it's Joe Burrow. Maybe for you, it's Saquon Barkley. Whoever it is, FanDuel lets you make your decision. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your future bets now, because FanDuel Futures Day is one day and one day only. FanDuel, play your game. All right. Thank you once again for making Locked On Seminoles, Gators, and Canes your first listens every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. I am joined by Brandon Olson of Locked On Gators, Alex Dono of Locked On Canes. Let's just get out the whatever you want. I mean, we were, just for sake of argument, we were joking around before we recorded about how many ridiculous rumors are about the Gators injuries. I'll get to that in a second, but Alex, obviously, Mario has probably threatened you and your wife and everybody else if you release any injury front. But is there anything obvious or glaring for the Canes going into the game against Notre Dame? Or are there just any positions you're worried about because they don't have enough players there? What do we got?
What is this injury word you speak of?
Yeah.
I've never heard this. I don't know what you're talking about. But no, in all seriousness, I mean, there's probably been some of the normal camp stuff, guys nursing little things here and there. I don't expect like anything significant to the point where anyone is going to be forced to miss the opening game. So I think from an injury front, in all reality, Miami is doing about as well as to be expected. You keep your fingers crossed for these final days coming up. In terms of position groups, I know we'll probably dive a little bit deeper into the quarterbacks, but I'll say first that, Carson Beck has been a pleasant surprise so far because, of course, coming into first day of camp a few weeks ago, you just didn't know how the arm was going to look, right? Because he missed spring football. You didn't know like how is he coming off the surgery. So there's been a lot of good stuff there. I think they've got a pretty healthy competition at wide receiver, which is, there's a power vacuum because all of their top 4 receivers and their top receiving tight end from last year have all either moved on to the NFL or transferred. So there's a ton of different spots to fill. I'm pretty encouraged about what I see there. I guess like the biggest concern that I would probably have, well, I guess 2, because one of these people may not think about this. So I'll start with this one. I'm hoping they can find place kicking consistency because there have been some rumblings about not like the most consistent reps in practice for the 2 kickers that they have competing. Bert Auburn, who transferred in from Texas, who he ended his Texas career with a little case of the yips. And they also brought in Carter Davis, a transfer kicker from FAU. It's a little bit difficult, as we talked about this the other day, Brian, trying to replace the Borregales dynasty after 5 years of the 2 brothers who hardly ever missed anything. Now we'll see how that goes. And then, the other big question mark I think I would have, that hopefully they answer this in a positive way is defensive tackle depth, especially given that, week 1, you're going up against a really physical Notre Dame team with arguably the best running back situation in the entire country. And, Florida's got a really good offensive line. Miami's going to see later on in September. So, finding like bodies behind, because I think they've got at least a 3-man rotation at defensive tackle with Justin Scott, David Blay, Ahmad Moten. But, when you're going up against big boy offensive lines, you need to probably have more than just a 3-man rotation there. So I think they've got to figure that out. And, other than that, it's like pretty positive, coming out of camp so far. Like there have been certain areas, whether it be receiver that I had some questions about that I feel better about. I had some questions about linebacker. I feel better about that group than I did before camp. And of course, Carson Beck, same thing. So I'm pretty optimistic, coming out of training camp to this point.
All right, Brandon, I know your injury report's at least a 35-minute one. You need to cut it back. But if you want to talk about Lagway or whatever, have at it. And if there's any position that you're just curious about, fire away.
Yeah, I mean, for Florida's injuries, it's really easy. If you pay attention to a lot of the written reporting, you just go to floridagators.com/roster, and every name is injured, apparently, according to a lot of the written reporting there. But I think that Florida's injury bug is really just overplayed. I think that they're being really conservative with injuries because, again, I've mentioned this 1,000 times on Locked On Gators. This is the first time in Billy Napier's tenure where you're not opening against a Power 4 opponent, because the first 2 years it was hosting Utah and then traveling to Utah. Last year it was hosting Miami. First time that you're not only not playing a Power 4 opponent, but you're not playing a Group of 5 opponent. It's the first time where you actually have something relatively easy. I mean, last year they didn't even play a Group of 5 team. It was 11 Power 4 teams and then an FCS school in Sanford. So this is the first time where you get to actually ease into your schedule. You've got LIU, and then you've got USF, and then you start Power 4 play. And so I think right now, all the injury reporting that we're seeing is mostly just them being really cautious with everything. Caleb Banks is in a boot. He practiced like 2 days later. It's not like he's in a boot because he can't walk or can't do things. Dallas Wilson's in a boot, already out. These guys, they're just being really cautious. And look, I get it. We get paid off clicks, we get paid off views, we get paid off whatever it is, and so you're going to try to get them. But I do think that is being greatly overplayed. DJ Lagway is not injury prone. He's hurt prone. He's missed one game despite dealing with being banged up pretty much his entire tenure. Really, like his entire career has basically been banged up. But guess what? He's always played. And so I'm really not as concerned as I think a lot of people are. And I hope this isn't me just being cautiously optimistic. I try not to be. I try to be realistic about things. And I'm not bought into the injury concern so much with Florida. I get it. Great views, great clicks, all that stuff. I think they're just being really cautious. And we've heard, we'll say murmurs that, well, Florida might straight up rest some guys if they're not even 100% against Long Island, because as we spoke about off air prior to recording this, Long Island has 2 offensive linemen that are shorter than I am. And again, I'm 5'11", not a tall dude, but the fact that you got some O-linemen trotting out there that are going to be shorter than me, I try not to respect the mighty, mighty LIU Sharks from Brookville, Long Island. But at the same time, you're going to destroy them. Might as well rest guys if you need to rest guys. I would prefer everybody plays. I think live game reps are very valuable, even for like a DJ Lagway that people talk about, all the injuries. Like, my biggest thing with Lagway, in order for his development to really progress, is he needs live reps. He needs to be able to work. Physically, he's all there. We've seen him. He's physically built as hell. He's ready to make any throw. Confidence is never an issue. You just got to be able to go out there and execute. And I think for him, that's all that matters, getting those live reps. So I want him to play against Long Island, especially because I feel like he's not going to get 7. Exactly. That's as 7 as you can get when we're talking about it, because you're just going to be protected the entire time. And if you're not protected the entire time, well,
different problem.
Go back to week 4 of Locked On Gators last year, and that's going to be a lot of this season if you're not protected against LIU. And so I think that for this team, yeah, there's guys that are banged up. I also think that fans need to adjust as the season's gotten later and longer. Surgeries happen after the season, and it's like surgeries that used to happen in late November are now happening in late December after a bowl game for guys that do play in the bowl game. And so your recovery timeline is just shifted a little bit for guys like Aaron Gates, who tore his Achilles in the 10th game of the season. He's ready to go. Like, he's full go already. And so, or tore his ACL there. And so he's ready to go. He's full go there. So I think a lot of it's just overplayed for clicks. Go ahead and get him. I think for me, it's just, there's some spots depth-wise that I'm a bit concerned about because they're really young, like cornerback. I feel pretty good. I feel really good about the top 2 in Devin Moore when he's healthy, and Dijon Johnson. And then Cormani McLean looks more built, apparently has picked up the playbook, so we'll see if that actually comes to fruition. But behind him, it's basically true and redshirt freshmen, and so injuries there could pile up. I'm not as concerned with defensive line depth as I think a lot of people are, because I think Florida right now, you've got your starter set. You've got really kind of a 2-deep set. And behind them, sure, if injuries happen, but I think you've got about 7 guys that you're developing back there. And so I'm not saying they're all going to hit, but I am saying the odds that you have 7 guys vying for 2 spots on the 3-deep, I feel pretty comfortable that someone's going to step up there. Maybe that's me being naive about it, but I feel pretty comfortable there. This is a team that, again, I think it's a college football playoff roster. And if they don't make the college football playoff, or if they don't reach expectations, I will be getting on Billy's rear end once again, because, I mean, this is it. This is your roster. If you don't make it, it's because your coaching isn't up to par. And then we got to have some more issues like we had, more conversations like we had last year that weren't super fun, but expectations are expectations. I spoke with Billy at the Senior Bowl, and he said, hey, it's the University of Florida. If you don't win games, they're going to call for your job. So he knows the deal. He knows what's happening.
With Florida State, Thomas Castellanos at the press conference the other day said that the offense is
Speaking of
healthy.
people shorter than me.
Well, that's another point. Tommy was actually pretty conservative at the press conference, but he was pretty calm. He was happy everybody was back. They even got Landon Thomas back, the tight end, who's very talented, but they just don't have much depth. Everything that I heard, as I mentioned earlier, like if they have an O-line injury, they got a few guys that are close. I don't know if they have a sixth guy, like definitively. That's a problem. They got a few guys that are close, but do you want them playing against Ruben Bain? Do you want them playing against, Florida? Like, they need to figure that out, and it's still a work in progress. Wide receiver, a bunch of young guys, really talented, but are they ready? They're going to have to. They're probably going to start a freshman, so we'll see. But the offense is relatively healthy. Defensively, the D-line is very similar to the O-line. Like, nobody's going to block Darrell Jackson very much, but the backup nose guard's banged up, and he's a freshman. He's a really good player, but still, he's a freshman. They don't have the depth that they really should have. They've got some guys, but not as many as they thought were stepped up. And they probably have some good players at linebacker, but do they have a dude? I'm not sure. Secondary, they got the one transfer from Houston who's been just a stalwart in fall camp. They think he's going to be the guy. Safety, they got some new players, some shifting some guys around, but it's at least healthy. But as far as where they can't lose anybody, it's trenches. And that's just a terrible spot to be, and it should never be that way at Florida State. So that's why if you're a gambling person, I would stay the heck away from Florida State on every game because they're just so close. And there's no such thing as an injury report that's accurate. Just ask Brandon Olson.
I'm not staying away from them. I'm taking them to lose. The fact that we're in year 6 for Mike Norvell and we're like, yeah, don't know about the depth. That's insane to me.
Oh, it is.
Donna and I are like, yeah, it's year 4, but that's insane to me that it's year 6 and we're like, yeah. By the way, they just went 2-10 and we don't know about the depth. It's just that's ridiculous to me.
I agree.
One of the great enigmas, and I also, I do Locked On ACC as well. We're always trying to figure out what's going on with Florida State. And people see the Miami stuff in my background, they assume I'm a hater. I'm just genuinely curious about what's going on there.
Well, you should be. I mean, it's a legitimate question, so I don't have any problem with you saying that. But when we come back, I want to talk about breakout players for the Canes, Gators, and Noles. That is next here on this crossover. Today's show is brought to you by Monarch Money. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one financial tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or in your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. With Monarch Money, it makes it easy for you and your significant other to view all your finances in one place, making it convenient to help yourselves, your kids, and your grandchildren. Don't let financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONCollege. All right, final segment here with Alex Dono of Locked On Canes, Brandon Olson of Locked On Gators, and Brian Smith of Locked On Seminoles doing this crossover as we get ready to start the 2025 college football season. Breakout players. Give me one or two each. This time, Brandon, I'll start with you. Somebody that maybe a starter, maybe not, but somebody you think that will be a definitive contributor for the Florida Gators, and why?
I think that one name I've been trying to tie up there is a guy that started last year but doesn't get nearly the respect and the love they deserves is Sharif Denson starting in the nickel. I think he's
good player.
I think he's one of the best nickels in the country. But I think that because I also, again, I know that everybody kind of has their own preference for or opinion of what's the second hardest position behind quarterback. For me, I think it's nickel. I think it's impossible. I never played at a high level. I played corner. I played safety, tried nickel, got toasted, never going to do it again. And so I think that it's incredibly difficult for someone who's Sharif Denson's, 5'11", 6 feet tall to be able to go against a tight end and survive and thrive, be used as a pass rusher, operate in coverage against guys like I'll just use a Gator for practice purposes of like Trey Wilson in the slot. Like I think that skill set that Sharif Denton has and the high level that he plays at completely underrated from last year. I think he was just a stud last year. Offensively, I'm looking at tight end Tony Livingston stepping into a starting role now that Arliss Boardingham's gone. I think Tony's going to be pretty damn good this year. He's going to be tight end too still, but Billy's going to love his 12 personnel sets there. And I think Tony brings blocking ability, and I think he's the more athletic of the two starters between him and Hayden. And so I think that Tony Livingston out there could finally break out, and DJ Lagway showed last year that he's, first off, decent connection with Tony Livingston in the passing game, and two, that he's just going to throw to whoever's open. He doesn't care. He's going to throw to whoever's open, preferably downfield. And DJ Lagway having Tony Livingston there, gonna be, I think, pretty fun in 2025.
Alex, how about you?
So I'll give you one on offense who's a freshman and one on defense who's either a 5th or a 6-year senior. So I'll cover the full spectrum of experience levels. On the offensive side, a player, I'm sure Brian covered him a lot in high school, Malachi Toney, true freshman receiver out of American Heritage. First of all, right place, right time for him because he happens to arrive right after Xavier Restrepo's career at Miami comes to an end, which creates a big opportunity for a starting slot receiver to emerge. Again, Miami has not put out an official depth chart to this point. We don't know for sure who the starter is going to be, but I did project my depth chart recently on Locked On Canes, and I'm taking a leap of faith that Malachi Toney could very well be the starter in the slot. He is just so consistent how he practices. And like, it's crazy because not only is he a true freshman, but he actually enrolled a year early out of high school. So like he, should still be in high school right now, not even in college. But, Toney, he's just he's extremely quick, really good route runner for his age and experience level. And I think he's going to make a lot of noise this year as a true freshman. And then on the defensive side, a player who transferred in from Rutgers who has been doing really well. And I think part of the edge that, Mo Toure has, and he didn't play last year because he had a torn ACL, which he seems to be fully recovered from. But the last time he played, Corey Heatherman, who's now Miami's defensive coordinator, was his linebackers coach. And Heatherman is his linebackers coach again and his defensive coordinator. So the fact that Toure, already knows the system. And, what I think what stands out to me about Toure is that he seems to be an alpha. Like he is a really good locker room guy, holds the teammates accountable. And I think he adds an element that Miami hasn't had enough of at linebacker in recent years, and that his range and his explosiveness, it makes you feel a little bit better about, whenever you face potentially running quarterbacks and really talented running backs this year, that Toure is going to be able to cover more ground. So I think that's someone, and I'll call him a breakout because he's, never done it at Miami, and he hasn't done anything in 2 years because he missed all of last year. But I think that's someone at linebacker I'm pretty bullish on. I expect him to be Miami's starting Mike linebacker this year.
Well, Miami found another good player. I've heard good things about him as well. So that's a good pick, Alex. For Florida State, a player that they're going to use in a lot of different roles. He was an All-American return man at Indiana before he transferred to Florida State. Jalen Lucas, he missed part of last year with the injury. He's back. He's one of the twitchiest guys in college football. They'll use him at running back, at slot, and return man. Not going to get a lot of touches. He's 170, 175 pounds, but he is electric. On the defensive side, it's Jason Jenkins, former defensive lineman at Tennessee that transferred to the Noles. Big guy, 6'6", 275. He's been defined as somebody that can play on the edge all the way to nose guard. Versatility never goes out of style, and neither does 6'6", 275. So those are two things that I think are important. They're going to rotate some guys on defensive line, but he's probably going to be a starter, even though he's missed some time. And they just don't have many guys with his kind of measurables. So if you're going to run a three-man front part of the time, which Tony White's defense does, having that length is important, but he hasn't gotten a lot of talk because he missed a lot of time over the summer coming back from injury, and he's finally back. They actually just finally had him in front of the microphone. So good for him and good for Florida State because, again, I don't think they're super deep on the D-line, and he may not be great. He probably is going to have to play more snaps than he needs, and by the time Florida State plays Brandon's Gators, maybe he's wore out. I don't know, but he's going to have a pretty good season by all accounts. So Gentlemen, thank you very much for coming on and doing this crossover. Alex Stano from Locked On Canes, Brandon Olson from Locked On Gators, and I am Brian Smith from Locked On Seminoles. Everybody have a good one. Thank you very much.